June 1967, Sinai. The desert is doing what deserts do best, lying with light. Heat lifts the horizon and bends it, like a hand smearing a drawing. From far away, the valley could be mistaken for a junkyard, a scrapyard someone abandoned and forgot. Up close, it's something else, a museum of decisions, a field where ideas have been melted down into twisted steel. A Soviet major steps out of a dust-coated Jeep, and the sand takes his boot like it's hungry. The air smells of sunburned fuel and old smoke. Not fresh fire, fire that's already finished eating, leaving only the stink of its argument. He is not infantry. His hands are clean in the way technical hands try to stay clean. His eyes are not looking for enemies. They are looking for explanations. He has a notebook in his pocket. He has a ruler. He has a small caliper that can measure the diameter of a hole, as if the truth can be fitted into millimeters and filed away. He walks past a tank whose turret is no longer where a turret should be. He doesn't stare at the violence. He stares at the geometry. A tank isn't dead to him the way a man is dead. A tank is a problem. A tank is a claim. The hull in front of him is Soviet-made. T-54 or T-55. At a glance, the desert has already started erasing the difference. The proud round turret shape is blackened, and the paint is blistered. The angled front plate, the glacis, still looks like it's trying to do its job, even now, even burned. The major crouches, runs a gloved finger over an impact mark, and pauses. The hole is small, too small for the story he was told. Behind him, an interpreter waits. A driver smokes with the anxious rhythm of a man who can't admit he's anxious. Somewhere down the valley, someone is firing a rifle. Not at them, not now, just into the air, as if gunfire is the only language left that makes sense. The major thinks about Moscow, about the smoke in the meeting rooms, about the chalk dust on blackboards where war is taught like algebra. Armor thickness, slope, muzzle velocity, silhouette, probability. And then he looks again at the little hole, neat as punctuation, and the chalkboard inside him develops a crack. They had come expecting a parade, or at least an understandable loss, something that could be blamed on air power, or sabotage, or luck. Instead, the valley has written a sentence in burnt steel. Your math did not protect you. He straightens and looks up toward the ridgelines. That's where the lie begins. Because if you were raised on Soviet manuals, ridgelines are where fools die. Ridgelines are where you silhouette yourself against the sky. Ridgelines are where you hand the enemy the easiest shot in the world. Soviet armor is built low for a reason. The tank is supposed to be a crouching animal, a steel predator hugging the ground. The enemy, especially an American enemy, is supposed to be tall, loud, and clumsy. The major knows the American tank by reputation. M48 Patton, a big beast with a high profile, the sort of machine that looks like it should have been retired and turned into a monument. In Soviet briefings, it was mocked. A gasoline guzzler, a rolling bonfire, a cathedral on tracks, and yet the valley is full of dead Soviet tanks, not dead American ones. The major hears the older voice in his head, his instructor, back when he was a cadet, tapping the side of a diagram with a pointer. War is numbers. Numbers do not panic. Numbers do not misunderstand. Numbers are loyal. The major exhales. The air is hot enough to feel thick. The desert doesn't care about loyalty. He turns to his interpreter, who is younger and trying very hard to look like he belongs here. Where were the Israelis? The interpreter gestures, uncertain, toward a string of rises and broken rock. On the high ground, they fired from there. The major can't help it. A short laugh escapes him, dry, humorless. From there, the ridgeline is a line drawn by geology, a stubborn fact in a world of careful theory. The major imagines an M48 cresting it, tall silhouette, generous target, begging for a 100mm shell. He imagines the Soviet-designed gun, heavy, reliable, confident. He imagines a T-54 crew seeing first, firing first, killing first. That's how the story was supposed to go. But the desert is full of a different story, and the major is standing inside it. The first trick he realizes is that everyone has been watching the wrong part of the tank. They watch the gun caliber as if bigger numbers guarantee victory. They watch the armor thickness as if steel is a moral quality. They watch the profile as if being shorter makes you invisible. They don't watch the crew. They don't watch the seconds. And in a tank duel, seconds are blood. He walks again, moving between wrecks like a man in a cemetery reading headstones. Each tank has its own kind of silence. Some are split open like a can. Some are intact, only blackened, as if whatever killed them did not need to be dramatic. He finds one with its driver's hatch warped. He leans in and stops at the smell. Burned insulation. A sour tang of chemicals that were never meant to meet fire. The inside is dark, claustrophobic. The Major thinks about the men who lived in that space, who fought in it, who sweated in it. He thinks about how the Soviet Union builds machines. The machine matters. The man adapts. That philosophy makes certain kinds of sense when your war is supposed to be short, massed, and unstoppable. When your war is supposed to be an avalanche across flat plains. When your war is supposed to be decided by how many steel boxes you can throw forward before the enemy breaks. But Sinai is not a flat plain. Sinai is broken ground, ridges, dips, valleys, dry riverbeds, rocks that bite tracks, angles that hide enemies. A place where the ground itself creates ambushes and duels. A place where war stops being arithmetic and becomes hunting. The Major's name is Anton Volkov, and he does not like poetry, but he cannot avoid it now. This valley is a laboratory, not a laboratory with white coats. A laboratory with burned-out hulls and shattered optics. Back in Moscow, the first reports had been treated like propaganda. Everyone treats the enemy's victory as propaganda until the wreckage arrives. When the export tank, the pride tank, the symbol tank, is seen dead in its hundreds, the mood changes. The teletype machines chatter, and the chatter has fear in it. Fear not of defeat in Sinai. Fear of what Sinai implies. Because if an American-made tank in Israeli hands can do this here, what does that mean for the maps that generals have been worshipping? What does that mean for the plans that assume Soviet armor as destiny? Volkov was sent because he is precise, because he can look at a hole in steel and tell you what made it. He was also sent because he is replaceable. If the conclusions are uncomfortable, someone has to deliver them. A Soviet tank is designed to be a low shadow. The T-54 was low for a reason, to be seen less, to be hit less. Its turret shape is rounded to deflect. Its frontal armor is sloped so incoming, rounds must chew through more metal and, ideally, skid away. The doctrine that comes with it is almost religious. The front of the tank is your shield. Your job is to face the enemy. Your faith is that if you do, you will live longer than he does. Volkov has taught this to others. He has believed it. Now the wreckage is asking him a question it does not care whether he can answer. He opens his notebook, draws a simple line. Ridgeline, draws a valley, draws two rectangles, one low, one tall, labels them with the names that have become more than names. T-54, M48. He should be able to solve it. He cannot. A young Egyptian tank crewman, prisoner now, sits in the shade of a tarp somewhere behind the lines. His name is Yusuf, and he is 19, and he has not been trained for Volkov's questions. Volkov wants numbers, distance, angle, first shot. Yusuf offers something else. Memory. The hill, Yusuf says through the interpreter. They were on the hill. Yes, Volkov says, impatient. How far? Yusuf squints into his own past. Far, Volkov presses. Did your commander see them first? A pause, a small shake of the head. That is not possible, Volkov says before he can stop himself. Yusuf looks at him with the exhausted calm of someone who has already lost everything a man can lose. It happened. Volkov flips the page, draws a little circle for a turret. He points to it with his pencil. How did you range them? Yusuf does not know what range means in Volkov's language. He knows what it means in his own. He mimics looking through a sight. He mimics guessing. He mimics shouting. He mimics the gun firing, the recoil, the smoke. He mimics the second shot never coming. Volkov has his first useful emotion. Anger. Not at Yusuf, at the gap. The gap between what the Soviet manuals assume and what the Egyptian crews lived. Because Soviet export tanks go abroad, But Soviet training does not always follow with the same care. The machine is shipped like a promise. The promise is assumed to teach itself. In Moscow, they call it fraternal assistance. In Sinai, it looks like young men inside steel boxes trying to make miracles with guesswork. Volkov returns to the valley at dusk. The sun lowers, and the metal wrecks take on a bruised color. The smoke plumes are thinner now, like the battlefield is exhaling. On a rise, he finds the tracks, 2 sets of them, looping, stopping, shifting. He kneels and touches the sand where a tank pivoted. The sand holds the memory of weight. The tank's turning radius becomes a kind of handwriting. He follows the tracks to a place where the tank must have stopped behind a ridge. He climbs up, careful, and looks over. The view is everything. From here, a gunner can see into the valley like a man looking down into a bowl. From here, the enemy appears not as a silhouette but as a target. From here, distance is a matter of optics and confidence. Volkov imagines an M48 sitting behind this ridge, not fully visible, just enough. He imagines a commander's head moving behind glass. He imagines the gun barrel rising just above the lip. He imagines the gun depressing down into the valley, reaching targets below without the tank having to expose its belly. Then he imagines a T-54 trying the same thing. A Soviet low-profile hull is excellent on flat ground. On broken ground, it becomes limited. The gun can only depress so far before it collides with the constraints of the turret and the roof. To shoot down into a valley, the tank has to crest higher, expose more, give the enemy a better shot. The low profile, the pride of the design, becomes an iron collar. Volkov writes a sentence in his notebook and immediately dislikes it because it sounds like a metaphor, not a finding. In this terrain, height is not a weakness. Height is a sightline. He closes the notebook. The desert wind flips a corner of the paper like it wants to read his secrets. Back home, they will want a technical miracle, a magic shell, a hidden American superweapon. That would be comforting, a single culprit. Volkov suspects the culprit is more humiliating, a system. He has heard rumors, always rumors, about American fire control, about optics that are not just magnifying glasses but measuring instruments, about turret drives that are not muscle fights but assisted motion. In Soviet tanks, the commander and gunner are partners, but partners separated by process. The commander spots, calls out. The gunner hunts through a narrow view, tries to find the target, estimates range, dials, fires. Each step is a second. The difference between life and death is often 1 second. If the enemy can collapse steps, collapse seconds, then the enemy does not need bigger guns. He needs better time. Volkov requests a captured Patton. He does not say it out loud like a prayer, but that is what it is. Because the valley is too loud, too chaotic, too contaminated by fear. He wants a clean object he can study. He wants to open the belly of the beast and see what is inside. Weeks later, the air is different. Snow, not sand. A proving ground far from Sinai, where the world is quiet enough to hear machines think. A captured M48 sits in a fenced area like an animal that has been tranquilized. Its shape is wrong in the Soviet landscape. Too tall, too rounded, too confident. Red stars painted on it look like a disguise on a thief. Soviet technicians swarm it, not with hate, with curiosity. They measure armor thickness, cast quality, the welds, the engine arrangement. They mutter in the language of mechanics. Tolerances, maintenance, failure points. On paper, the gun is not impressive, 90 millimeters, a number that should not frighten a 100 millimeter doctrine. They crawl into the turret, and the first surprise is not a part, it is space. The turret basket is wider. The loader can move without folding himself into a knot. The commander can sit without being pressed into metal. Controls are arranged as if the designers cared about hands and knees and the human spine. One of the technicians, an older man who has spent his life inside Soviet steel boxes, straightens and blinks as if he has walked into a room in a foreign palace. "Why so much space?" he mutters, half offended. Volkov's answer forms in his mind before anyone asks the right question. So, the crew can work faster. So the crew can work longer. So, the crew can arrive at the trigger not already exhausted. There is an optical device mounted in a way that looks, at first glance, like indulgence. Two eyes spread apart, like the tank itself has binocular vision. It is not a simple telescopic sight. It is a rangefinder, a coincidence or stereoscopic design, depending on the exact variant and refit. Volkov does not care what label the Americans use. He cares what it does. It allows a trained operator to stop guessing. And it changes everything. Volkov watches a test crew climb into the captured tank. Soviet men, trained on Soviet logic, now forced to use American logic. The first attempts are clumsy. The rangefinder demands a kind of patience. Align images, merge them, read distance. It feels slow when you are not practiced. One officer scoffs. In battle, who has time for this? Volkov does not answer. He has already seen the valley. He knows battle is not one slow moment. Battle is many fast moments. If your system allows you to be fast repeatedly, then you can afford a second spent measuring, because you will save 5 seconds not correcting. A target pops up on the far range, a simple silhouette. In a Soviet tank, this is a chain of shouting and cranking. The commander calls direction. The gunner wrestles the traverse. The turret lurches in little angry steps. The gunner peers through a narrow view and hunts for the target like a man trying to find a face in a crowd through a keyhole. Then, the range guess. A mental estimate, a rough correction, then the shot. Now, the American tank. The turret rotates not like a man's shoulders straining, but like a door on good hinges. Powered, smooth. The sound is not a scream of gears, but a low hum, as if the machine is breathing steadily. The commander's sight is wider. His view of the world is less like a straw and more like a window. He can keep the target in sight while moving the turret. He can coordinate without panic. And then, this is the part that feels almost insulting. The relationship between commander and gun changes. The commander can lay the turret toward where he is looking more directly, reducing the lag of translating words into motion. The gunner receives the target already near his sight picture, instead of spending precious seconds hunting for it. Volkov watches the gunner peer into the rangefinder and begin turning the knob. 2 images slide, hesitant at first, then closer. The gunner's face is calm, focused, click, a small click, not loud, not dramatic. The kind of click you might hear from a camera shutter. But Volkov feels it as if someone just locked a door. Because at that click, the range becomes a number, not a guess. And a number can be fed into a mechanism, whether mechanical or electrical, that sets elevation properly, that accounts for drop, that turns ballistics from art into process. This is not magic, it is method. The shot cracks. The target is struck cleanly. An officer in the observation bunker clears his throat, tries to make it about pride. Our gun is bigger, he says, as if that is an answer. Volkov does not look away from the smoke drifting on the range. In a duel, he says quietly, the first accurate shot is the bigger gun. Silence follows, not because they agree, but because the sentence is difficult to argue with. Back in the valley of Sinai, Yusuf had described it with the simplicity of a survivor. They hit us before we could see them. Volkov now understands how. Not because the Americans had a secret tank. Not because the Patton's armor was invincible. But because the Patton's crew could see farther in a usable way, decide faster, and deliver a first-round hit more often. And when a tank duel is decided by first-round hits, the casualty ratios stop being unusual and start being inevitable. But the story still has another tooth, because hitting first matters only if your hit can kill. In Moscow, the old faith still speaks. Sloped armor defeats kinetic rounds. The glacis is a shield. Volkov requests ammunition from the same source as the captured tank. He wants to see what the Israelis were feeding the Patton, because a gun is a mouth, and what matters is what it bites with. A box arrives, stenciled markings, American designations. The rounds look familiar until you examine the shape. Some are not the classic pointed armor-piercing shot that relies on sheer momentum. Some have a different nose. Some carry fins. Some carry the quiet promise of chemistry. A ballistic specialist on the commission, glasses, careful hands, picks one up like it might explode from being offended. Heat, he reads aloud. High explosive anti-tank. In Soviet minds, heat is often the domain of infantry weapons. Rockets, grenades, things that are unreliable at angles, fuses that can misbehave, jets that can be disrupted. Good for ambushes, not the kind of thing you base a doctrine on. But doctrines are built on what you dismiss. They set a target hull downrange. Not to replicate Sinai exactly, replication is a lie in its own way, but to answer the Commission's private question. Can a 90mm Patton actually defeat the sloped front of a T-54 at useful combat ranges if the ammunition is designed correctly? Volkov stands with his hands in his coat pockets, feeling the cold seep into his knuckles. He imagines Sinai's heat and almost misses it. The gun fires. The round travels not like a heavy thrown object, but like a purposeful dart. The impact is not a big explosion, not a movie fireball. It's a sharp flash, brief, localized, followed by a strange quiet. They drive out to the target. Snow crunches under boots. The closer they get, the more the specialist's posture tightens. On the sloped armor plate is a small hole. Again, small, neat. A punctuation mark. Around its edge, the steel looks wrong, not shattered, not cracked in familiar patterns. It looks softened, as if heated and pushed aside. As if the armor was not defeated by blunt force, but by something that behaved like a cutting tool. The specialist touches it with a gloved finger and pulls back quickly, as if the hole might accuse him. Shaped charge, he murmurs. In Volkov's mind, the symbol arrives uninvited, two images merging into one. The old image, armor as shield against speed, slides aside. The new image, armor as material vulnerable to a focused jet, clicks into place. Heat does not care about velocity in the same way. It cares about formation. It cares about a liner and an explosive and geometry. It produces a jet that behaves less like a bullet and more like an industrial cutter. Not because it melts everything like fantasy, but because under extreme conditions, metal can flow and erode and fail in ways that embarrass simple metaphors. And slope. Slope can be cheated by a mechanism that acts faster than the armor can do its favorite trick. Volkov watches the senior officers' faces. Their eyes do not widen dramatically. They narrow. They become calculating. A doctrine that has been worshipped is now being told. Your holy angle is not holy enough. Volkov knows what will happen next, not because he is prophetic, because he has lived in institutions. They will search for a way to make this someone else's fault. They will blame training. They will blame Arab crews. They will blame poor maintenance. They will blame tactics. All of those things may be true, and that's the problem. In war, many things are true at the same time. The most dangerous truths are the ones that cooperate. In Sinai, the terrain punished low gun depression. The ridges rewarded hull-down tactics. The Patton's height became a sight advantage instead of a silhouette disadvantage. The Israeli crews had months and years to build muscle memory, to integrate commander and gunner into a single hunting organism. Their optics allowed useful range estimation. Their turret drive allowed quick, smooth laying. Their ammunition included shaped charge options that could bite at angles the Soviets trusted. On the other side, Egyptian crews were often less practiced in coordinated gunnery and rapid target acquisition. Inside the cramped turret, a loader's movement is slower, not because he is weak, but because the space is cruel. Range estimation becomes guesswork. Communication becomes shouting. Stress eats seconds, and seconds again are blood. Volkov returns to his quarters that night and spreads his notes out on a table. The lamplight makes the paper look yellow. The room smells of coal heat and old paint. He draws the symbol he cannot stop thinking about. Two overlapping circles like the rangefinder images. He labels one doctrine. He labels the other reality. In between is the click. He writes a sentence and then crosses it out. He writes another. He sleeps poorly. When the report is finally drafted, it travels up the chain like a patient being carried through a hospital, passed hand to hand, examined, altered, dosed. In Moscow, the general who receives it does not read it like a scientist. He reads it like a politician. He taps the section about ergonomics, about crew fatigue, about the difference between fighting the enemy and fighting the machine. "Do not write this," he says flatly. Volkov keeps his face still. "It is true." The general looks at him as if truth is a childish habit. "What is useful," the general says, "is what can be corrected without panic." Volkov understands. If the problem is Arab crews are poorly trained, then the Soviet Union can claim superiority remains intact. If the problem is the tank's human-machine system is behind, then the problem is not a client. The problem is home. Volkov watches as the language is softened. Where he wrote system advantage, someone writes situational factors. Where he wrote fire control integration, someone writes optical differences. Where he wrote ergonomic superiority, someone writes crew comfort. Comfort. As if comfort is a luxury and not a weapon. He wants to argue, but arguing is how careers die. The general points at the shape charge section. This, the general says, we can use, we can counter, we can improve armor arrays, we can develop our own. Volkov nods. The general likes problems that can be solved with factories. Then the general points at the section about turret drives and commander control. This, he says, write carefully. Do not give them ideas. Volkov almost smiles at the irony. The enemy already has the ideas. The enemy has been using them. The only people being protected from ideas are the men in this room. The report leaves Volkov's hands as something less honest than he intended, but not entirely toothless. It carries enough discomfort to cause budgets to shift, development to accelerate, arguments to ignite behind closed doors. Outside, the Soviet Union continues to sell tanks, continues to export steel like confidence, continues to teach doctrine like scripture. But Sinai has already happened, and Sinai has already planted a doubt that cannot be bombed away. Years later, a young Soviet tanker will sit inside a newer model and feel a different kind of machine. He will not know Volkov's name. He will not know about a report that was rewritten for political comfort. He will simply feel the turret respond more smoothly, the sight picture clearer, the process faster. He will think it is progress. He will not realize it is also fear. Because the greatest advantage the Patton demonstrated in that proxy war was not that it was indestructible. It burned, it broke, it ran out of fuel like any hungry machine. The advantage was that it treated time as a component. It treated the crew as part of the weapon. It treated perception as armor. In the end, the desert did not prove the Patton was better in some universal way. It proved something more unsettling. Superiority is local. It depends on terrain, training, maintenance culture, and the invisible choreography inside the turret. The Soviet Union built a shield, strong, sloped, proud. The Americans and their allies built a hunter's system, eyes, hands, smooth motion, and a method that could turn seeing into killing faster than the other side could turn belief into action. Volkov keeps one page from the original draft, not the official copy, a private page folded and hidden. On it, he has drawn the rangefinder's 2 images. He has written, in small handwriting, "We did not lose to a tank. We lost to a process." He folds the page again and places it back in his pocket. Outside, the world continues to act as if wars are decided by the biggest number on a specification sheet. Inside Volkov's pocket, the paper is warm from his body heat. 2 images still refusing to merge. And somewhere in the distance, whether in Sinai sand or European mud or jungle humidity, another crew turns a knob, aligns a sight, and hears a small click. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the sound of reality becoming usable,